In this module, you'll find an example of the entire sales meeting from introduction to close as a role play. We've put it together so you can see how some of the points we've discussed can work and so that you can see how you can deal with some of the various issues. Now, of course, this is an artificial situation which we've just contrived. It's simply an example. We want to make a number of points in a short space of time. We've made it so that the product and the service being sold is not specified. Neither is the customer's business, because we don't want to get into lots of irrelevant detail. We really just want to focus on the process and to highlight some of the points made in the program. We're going to pause at various stages during the role play to give you a moment to consider what you would do in this situation and also to make some general learning points. So let's start. We'll join the role play right at the beginning. You have to imagine this is a salesperson calling on a new potential customer.
Good morning, I'm Joanna Smith of Exco.
I'm Jane White, I'm Purchasing Director.
Great, so I noticed from your LinkedIn profile that you haven't been here very long.
No, I was with Wyco previously.
Is it very different?
Yeah, the planned expansion means a lot of new challenges.
We start with a typical introduction. Then the salesperson moves quickly to initiate the conversation and scores early points by demonstrating preparation and a nice way of starting the conversation about the customer. This approach also enables the customer to talk about expansion, which should be a good sign. What would you do next?
Well, thank you for taking the time to meet me. I believe we said 45 minutes for this initial discussion. So, given that this is the first time we've met, I think it'd be useful if I could tell you a little bit about my company and then you could tell me a little bit about your company and what your needs are. But before we start, is there anything in particular that you would like to cover today?
Yep, well, of course, we need to understand what you do, but mostly I really need to understand how you're going to meet our expansion needs without the huge extra cost and disruptions.
So the salesperson could have followed up the point the customer made about the planned expansion, and this would have been a perfectly sensible way to continue the conversation. Instead, the salesperson has moved back to the more formal model and wants to confirm the purpose and the format of the meeting. The salesperson also wants to know what the customer wants to get from the meeting. And what would you do next?
Then let me start with a quick review of what we do. So I am the senior manager in the sector, so I'll be your main point of contact. Our company has been in business for many years, and we're the market leader in the sector, so we have a broad range of experience, and we have many flexible options, so we should be able to deal with any sort of situation that you might encounter.
The salesperson has provided a very brief overview of the company, stressing the general positives and picking up on the customer's planned expansion to include this in the introduction. This introduction, it's not intended to address all of the customer's needs because we don't know what they are yet. It's intended simply to show the customer that we're a good potential supplier. So what would you do next?
So I've been through your website and I've read some of the recent press stories, so can you tell me a little bit about the expansion and what's driving it?
The salesperson wants to move away from talking and move to listening as quickly as possible, so cuts to ask a question. If customers want more information at this point, then typically they'll stop you and ask you to tell them more. The salesperson has again showed that preparation's been done and has started with the customer's main point, the expansion. At the start, the salesperson wants to know why the expansion is happening before hearing what it is. And this is important because knowing the strategic logic behind the decision will help you frame the solution.
As you know, we've just had a new CEO appointed, and he's been charged with expanding the business 20%. So obviously that means extending our lines. So we're looking at really focusing on new selling and marketing strategies to fill capacity. So we're looking at entering new sectors and possibly extending internationally in the next couple of years.
Okay, great. So you need a supplier who can grow with you and be flexible to your changing needs.
Exactly.
Can I ask why you don't continue with your current supplier?
The customer's given lots of good information here, and the salesperson has summarised it in positive terms. And then the salesperson has asked a provocative question. Now, you'd have to think twice about this sort of question so soon in the process, but since the meeting's going so well, it's a legitimate question, and the salesperson feels confident to ask it.
Good question. We did ask our supplier first, but quite frankly, their follow-up has not been up to scratch so far. Their account manager didn't know a lot about our international business and they haven't followed up yet.
Great, thanks. So we are looking at potentially replacing the existing supplier and offering you a complete service?
Not quite yet. They're perfectly competent. We just haven't been happy with their response so far.
The salesperson has tested the business potential and the willingness of the customer to switch suppliers. So far, it seems that while the current supplier is good enough, it may not be able to cope well with the planned changes. Let's assume that the salesperson spends more time uncovering more about the customer and probing into the specific needs of the business. We'll rejoin the conversation when the salesperson is conducting a short summary.
So clearly there will be a great deal of business growth and change over the coming months, and it seems like you need a supplier who you can work closely with and who you can count on to meet your changing needs. So it sounds like the cost of getting this wrong could be pretty high.
Yeah, very high. And I mean, if we don't meet these targets, the CEO and the shareholders will be very upset.
Next, the salesperson moves to understand the buying process.
Can we talk a bit about the buying process that you'll use? Like who needs to be involved?
Yeah, well, basically there'll be a committee involved because it's an important decision. They will be in charge of making a recommendation to the board, and I'm the committee leader.
Okay, so it will be the committee making the recommendation, but the board making the final agreement.
Exactly.
We'll assume now that the conversation moves forward. The salesperson will continue to summarise understanding and receive corrections and additional pieces of information, and where applicable, to discuss in general terms aspects of the offer. Clearly, this is not a selling meeting, so we don't expect to see a full sales presentation. So now the salesperson understands the buying process and tries a trial close. You'll recall that a trial close is used to test your position and offer.
So we have discussed a number of specific needs, and I've talked a little bit about how we can support you. So based on the conversation that we've had thus far, do you think that we can meet your needs?
Well, we'll certainly need to get into the specifics, but based on what you've said so far, I do think you found a reasonable solution.
Well, great. Given the timing, can I meet with the committee on Monday and see the review session?
The salesperson has established that they're on the right track, and so uses a closed question to close on a meeting with the buying committee.
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
Well, given the seniority of the team, we'll need to meet your senior members, and we'll also need to get some references.
Okay, so if I can get the references to you later today and ensure that the senior people can join the meeting on Monday, can we go ahead with that?
Yes, if you can do that, then yes.
Great, well then I will make sure that happens, and I'll write to you by the end of the day to confirm everything.
The customer raised an objection, prompting the salesperson to find out more. And this turned out to be a genuine issue and not really an objection at all. The salesperson closes with a statement defining the next steps. So what we've seen in a somewhat artificial way is the process of bringing together some of the points which have been made in this program. I hope it was helpful. Good luck.